number of the pencil I'm using will appear in the corner of your screen. Hello, I'm Colin Bradley. We're going to be working on a picture of a wolf. I'm working from a photograph, but I've changed the pose slightly to make it more appealing. I'm going to start with the ear. As before, lots of white. We'll just complete the area just below the ear on the top of the head, so we've got something to butt up to. Okay. And now, inside the ear, we're going to be using some grey. And that will come back into the white, because we're working from light to dark, as usual. And that looks pretty good at the moment. Okay, now on the outside of edge of the ear, I'm going to start off by putting in some dark ochre. And we'll go down to about there, and it fades in but doesn't come too far into the white, and down on the other side the same, and then down through the middle, and then down through here. Okay, good. Now I'm going to use a little ivory now in this area and in here. Great. Now that's basically the foundation of the ear done, and we've got to now build on that. First of all, I'm going to use the dark brown over the top of the ochre, but not all the way, so we've got a recession there. And it's the same on the top edge, a little bit of dark brown here, and then fade it. So it's really only the tip of the ear that's got the stronger colour. Now just inside there, just on top of the ivory, I'm just going to add a little bit more dark ochre, just a touch. You can see how it changes though. Look at the difference between these two. That's because we've got the ivory underneath it. Okay, well, that's all I need for that. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Because we've got the ivory underneath it, once again we've got a different tone into the grey, like that. Now on top of the grey, I'm going to use the dark greyish brown. It's a very deep colour, but I need to get into this very quickly, like that. And this only goes in the very deepest parts of the ear. Okay. I'm switching pencils now again to the brown. That takes over, it comes out of here, and that is on top of the ochre again. And that brings down to there, and this time we can bring this brown back into the hair at the top of the head. A little bit lighter here. Great. Now we've got to bring some colour into the fur. And what I'm going to do now is to use the grey, this time on top of the white that we've got, and it will now register just as a darkening agent for the white. You can see how it works. Because inside the ear it's quite dark. Like that. And we just bring the grey and shade the grey into the darker, and we're nearly finished in this section. Just a little bit of brown just to add onto the ochre we've done before. And just as a final touch, I want to put just a little bit of colour in the ear. So what I'm using is the ready ochre now, just to put a little tone of colour in to just spots around the ear, just up into here. That. And really the very final thing we do here is just to bring the white back in and expand them, the hairs, so that they come back over the top of the grey, and then look as though they're coming out like that. Now the other ear is done in exactly the same way. Okay, now with the second ear done, now we're going to start with the fur. I'm going to start between the ears on the top of the head. But just before I do that, we need to establish some white around the eye so that we have something to butt up to, and then just down the front of the nose. Now what that does is gives me a stopping point. Okay, now back into the fur. Now primarily it's going to be light fur with a little grey and other colours added, and also I'm working in the direction of the fur in short sharp strokes. Now I am changing this somewhat from the photograph. The photograph itself is not very clear and doesn't give me the detail that I need. So what I'm doing is I'm improvising and making it a little more attractive. Okay, now that's great. Now the next thing we're going to use is the grey. That goes on to the white in exactly the same way. Now although the white has given us a very good base here, it's also, because I've got some of the paper showing through, the grey is not only hitting the white, but it's also hitting the paper. And that gives us a little bit of variation in the tone. Now we've used the white, we've used the grey, and now there's the turn, a little bit of yellow ochre. Just a little touch on the sides, but mainly in the central. Then I'm going to switch to the dark ochre, do the same again. The next colour we're going to use is the dark greyish brown. Now this is a very strong colour, and if you put too much on too quickly it's going to spoil it. So what we do though is very lightly touch it into the fur, and again following the same pattern as we did before. You can see how effective that's already is becoming. You see how important the stopping points are. If you're going too far here you'd end up with too much of this darker fur, not enough of the white. I'm just going in with the brown, and just here and there just putting a little bit of depth, and these little markings can be also done in the brown. That picks up the colour that we've used in the ear nicely, and I'm just going to just a little bit more emphasis where we have the meeting of the light fur. Just a little more depth there, and we can call that a day. May have to go back in there, but I'm going to do the eyes first. We're going to put some light in the eye, and a little light goes in here and here. There's also a smidgen of eyelashes, and we just put a little of those in there too. I'm going to put a little ochre, yellow ochre, in the eye itself, but I'm not putting it in the pupil at the moment, and I'm using a grey to shape the outside of the eye, the outside edge. And I'll same on the other side. Okay, now on the top I'm going to be a little bit more careful because I want to retain a little bit of eyelash if I can. So we could put the eye grey on the top, like that, over the top, and the same on that one, like that. And I think that will be all I need for the moment on the grey. Now we need to darken it, so I'm going to put the brown on the outside, on top of the grey. Putting the grey in first just softens the effect of the brown. It would be a bit harsh otherwise, and then just start picking up. You can see very carefully leaving a little bit of eyelash that they have on the top. That's great. Okay, down the other side. Okay, now just before we deepen the eye, I'm going to put a little bit of grey in the pupil, and in there too. And I'm also going to put a little bit of light in here. I should have put it in before, but I put it in now on the bottom. Okay, now we use the dark ochre just to put a little colour in the eye, a little grey for the pupil, Now, just at the very bottom edge, I'm just going to add a little bit of ivory, just to put a little light on the bottom half of the eye, and on the top half we use the brown again, ever so lightly, just to put a bit of colour in. Now you can see how delicate that is. It's really just a touch of colour. Okay, you can leave that at the moment like that, and then a little bit of black pupil, and around the outside edge you can see there's not a lot to it, but it's very dramatic once the black comes in. And a little over the top edge, like that, and around the other side. Now I need to use the brown again, this time just to fade a little at the top. That's a little bit of brown. Now, okay, we leave that for the moment and work on the eye surround. I'm going to bring in some grey in here, which is going to be put in on the side, just in here, because there's a little dip there that we want to pick up on, and we using the grey is suggesting that, and it's the same on the other side here, like that. Back into the white, and what I'm going to do now is just a little bit of light back into the eye there, and just a smidgen on the eye lash, like that. Now just underneath the eye, a little grey. This is for colour, this is for effect, and on there too.